What exactly is mate poaching? Stick around and let's chat about it today on this episode of Christian Date Coach. Let's hit it. What's up, everybody? My name is Dr. Phoenix Singh, and it's a pleasure to have you here with me, as always, for this episode of Christian Date Coach. It's a blessing to have you in the audience. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please do like it, subscribe to our channel, hit that button so you get notifications every time that we post new original content. Feel free to share it with your friends, especially if you know anyone who's kind of going through something like this, or maybe has recently experienced it, maybe to people in your congregation who you kind of know are going through something like that. And at the same time, obviously, we would love to have you follow us on the social media accounts below. So let's jump right into it. Today we're going to be talking about a phenomenon that has been going on since time immemorial, but now we've got kind of a formal term that we utilize when describing it, and this is mate poaching. So what the heck is mate poaching, right? So the idea here is the attempt to seduce a person out of a committed relationship, right? And this is something that I find very interesting to talk about because a recent report said that, or found that 60% of men and 53% of women self-report having tried to seduce a person out of a committed relationship, right? This is something that a lot of people have a lot of trouble with in terms of wrapping their head around. So I want to kind of shed some light on really why this ironically and sadly makes sense that this would happen both for men and for women, okay? So first I want to cover it from the woman's side, and then I want to cover it from the man's side, okay? So at the end of the day, remember that women are hypergamous, meaning that women kind of do the picking when it comes to long-term mates. And this, of course, makes perfect sense, right? It's actually what largely has driven civilization for as long as we've had civilization, right? Men needing to be industrious to, at the end of the day, kind of prove and demonstrate their higher value to women to be able to actually attract a mate. And what happens is that women have a significantly higher cost of gestation. At the end of the day, biologically, it would be possible for me, if I had the stamina, to be able to go out and get, 15 women pregnant today, right? Do I have to actually bear any of those children? I do not, right? I have virtually no cost of gestation, right? Versus for women, each one of those 15 different women has a very high cost of gestation, having to carry the baby, the load on their bodies, right? It's very significant. I mean, women are pretty phenomenal, right? In many ways, and this is one of them in terms of women's bodies. And so because the cost of gestation is significantly higher, obviously women need to be picky in terms of, what guys they choose to be able to actually have these long-term relationships with, especially when it comes to having a sexual relationship. Because women at the end of the day are the gatekeepers of sex. Women are the gatekeepers of sex, and men are the gatekeepers of relationships, right? You cannot have sex without a woman unless, God forbid, it's a case of rape or some sort of, forced sexual assault, right? But in terms of ordinary interaction, right, you can't have sex without a woman, right? A woman's agreement. And you cannot have a relationship unless the man agrees to actually be in it and actually be committed to it, okay? So at the end of the day, this is kind of the law of nature, right? This is literally just evolutionary biology. So what happens is that when it comes to mate poaching, right, you always have to think, from the woman's side, you have to think about hypergamy. And the idea is, again, with hypergamy, right, women date laterally and they date up. Okay, men date laterally and they date down. The example that I usually give about this is, you will have groups of guys around who will say something like, oh, she's so gorgeous, she works at the Dairy Queen down the street, but she's so not the best job, but she's got a great heart, she's just the most gorgeous woman alive, right? Fantastic, right? You'll hear that amongst guys, and it'll be like, okay, right? People wouldn't bat an eye. But I have never seen a situation, right, where you have a group of women around saying, listen, he is so hot, he is the hottest guy, He works at McDonald's, right? But he's just so hot, right? What? No, like you really don't see that, right? And there are different things that make women attractive to men and men attractive to women, right? Now, in the current cultural context, a lot of these different proxies for things that are revolutionarily based, they end up kind of getting swept over. But by understanding them, it illuminates so much about human behavior, right? Culture has moved so much faster than we are able to biologically evolve, right? So it's one of these things where I tell people that it's completely fine. I have no problem if you say that, culture needs to change and, all these things are wrong and da-da-da-da. At the end of the day, I have my opinions about it too, right? So you're more than welcome to believe whatever you like, right? It's not going to change my opinion unless you actually show me data to support things, right? Because I'm a data-driven person. The main function of this channel is to be able to provide evidence-based guidance when it comes to what works and what is biologically based when it comes to attraction, dating, and relationships, right? The goal is not for me to just give you my random opinion, right? Or to be influenced by other people's scientifically based and peer-reviewed data, opinions. It's just not, right? But what happens is that because of things like hypergamy, cost of gestation, etc., right, it makes a lot of sense for women to be able to go for the highest value male, right? And value can be defined in a lot of different ways. It can have to do with physical security, right? It can have to do with emotional security. It can have to do with resource security, which, in modern day would be fiat currency, so money, right? There's a lot of different ways or whatever to be able to operationalize these things. Now, I would like to think that in the Christian community, part of emotional security would essentially, in terms of being attracted to emotional security, would be a man who is very spiritually mature and who really is walking with Christ in real time, right? And really has a heart for God. To me, that factors into the perception of emotional security. And I would like to think that for believers, it is much more that as opposed to having a guy who, when I say is high T, in terms of high testosterone, is more disagreeable. And when I say disagreeable, I don't mean that he doesn't agree with things that you say. What I mean is that disagreeable men tend to be really kind of more stoic. They have less emotional expression, generally speaking. People may say, kind of like the quiet type, the mysterious type, etc., which is a very masculine quality, right? And it has to do with disagreeableness, because men in the aggregate are less agreeable than women are, right? And again, agreeableness has nothing to do with being a person pleaser. It has to do with the primary way that you actually solve problems in your life, having to do with collaboration as opposed to competition, right? And so men tend to solve things more through head-to-head competition. Women tend to solve it more through either collaboration or group-based exploration of obstacles, okay? That's what the literature suggests. So what happens here, though, right, is that what you find is that women are looking for, the highest value mate, which makes sense because of cost of gestation being very high. Never, and remember, it's a rule for this channel, should we, bash or shame women or anything like this. It's just something to understand about the biological prerogatives of women versus men, right? It is what it is. And it's certainly nothing to be either ashamed of or frustrated with if you're a guy, etc., okay? That said, in that context, mate poaching makes complete sense, especially because if you are a single woman and you see a man who is in a long-term relationship, right, the likelihood is that this serves as proof of concept. Now, that's a business term, but the idea is, someone else has made it clear. Let's say that it's a woman and you really value that woman. You think that she's beautiful. You think that she's intelligent, that she's successful. You admire certain personality traits or skill sets that she happens to have, right? You literally look up, right, to this person. Well, if this guy is someone who she's elected to be with, that must mean that this is a particularly high quality guy, right? And I am not saying that all mate poaching is intentional, right? A lot of it can basically be implicit because remember, 99.999996% of all information processing is done implicitly. It's not things that we're actively, cognitively making decisions about, etc. It's being done at a subconscious level, okay? Now, whether that is something like, your pupils dilating or getting flushed when you kind of see the person, or whether that is something that is intentional, right? In terms of, just sticking around a little bit longer, when your friend leaves to be able to spend time with the guy, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is, right? These could all be signs of mate poaching. And it's something, again, that does make sense because of hypergamy, and it makes sense because of proof of concept, right? Basically, this other woman has made the decision for you. She's showing you that this is a high-quality guy, so you say, okay, great. This is why there is a very unfortunate double standard between single fathers being seen as attractive as opposed to single mothers, right? A single father essentially is displaying, right, that they have good paternal skills, they're good caregivers, right? And also, in terms of sexual marketplace value, someone saw this guy as sufficiently high value to actually procreate with this man. And that is proof of concept, right? And this is why a man kind of, holding his son or daughter's hand, walking around the playground, etc. It's, oh my gosh, it's so attractive, he's such a good father, right? It is such a double standard. I have so many, great friends in the church who are single mothers, who are just phenomenal women, phenomenal believers, just really, really steeped in the word. And they'll report to me about how challenging it is as a single mother to be able to date. And again, there's biological reasons for this. You could certainly say that, if you take a look at the animal kingdom, right, there's certainly just buku number of species, so many species, where essentially, a new, man, a new male mate, right, will literally kill the children, right, of the previous mate. To be able to make sure that there's more resources for their own bloodline. Now, obviously, God forbid anything like that would ever happen for humans. It's horrific, right? But in the animal kingdom, that happens all the time, right? And at the end of the day, we are animals, right? Human beings are animals. Don't get it twisted, right? I deeply, deeply, it's not even a question. I'm always kind of surprised that people will say, well, no, we're not primates, definitely not Homo sapiens, we're totally different than everybody and anybody else, and we are very unique as human beings. There's no doubt about that, and I do believe that we're, uniquely chosen by God, but it does not mean that for some reason our biological makeup is so far and beyond other animals that we can't learn a tremendous amount. Most science or whatever, right? Most pharmaceuticals, so many things, right, are initially tested on animals. Now, whether you believe that's a good thing or not, it's up to conjecture, and, God bless you, whatever you think about it. But it's something that, we rely on proxies for human beings to be able to test things that at the end of the day, we're using on the day-to-day, right? So it's just important to be able to understand those parallels between human beings and other primates, all right? But at the end of the day, there is that unfortunate double standard that's there, and a man who has a child, right, or a man who has a girlfriend, especially if it's a girlfriend that you find attractive, or even if it's a girl that you just think, well, she's not good enough for him, right? She's not good enough. I hear this sometimes, right? She's not good enough for him. I would be so much better. Why on earth would, he pick her over me, etc., right? The idea very much is that, you value this man more because he already has a partner. And this gives rise to this phenomenon of mate poaching. Now, to me, one of the most unfortunate things that I hear about in relationships is people who basically say, it's not that I don't want the relationship to end. I honestly think it's basically done, but I'm going to stay in it until I meet someone new so that I can basically monkey branch from the person I'm with now to this new person. That is so fundamentally unfair to your partner. And frankly, it's unfair to you to be able to do that. Maybe you haven't given being single enough of a chance. People treat it like it's some kind of a plague. I really don't understand that. I get it at a superficial level, but the depths of joy you can experience as a single person are just as high, if not higher, than what you can experience as someone who's in a committed relationship. I've experienced it. I deeply believe it. I have seen it in friends and colleagues. People just don't give it enough of a chance. And it's something where if you're a serial monogamist and, you just jump from one relationship to the next with no time in between, I really do not perceive that as being a healthy long-term plan. Psychologically, spiritually, you name it. So simply staying in something because you're afraid of being alone is really not a good idea. Please, please think about that again, okay? So anyway, that is the women's side of things. Then you have the men's side of things, right, in terms of mate poaching. Now, men are definitely quite sexual creatures. There's no doubt about it. We're very highly visual creatures as well. We also have hypergamy, right? In terms of, who we date, we don't date laterally and up. We date laterally and down, right? And in a variety of different ways. The most successful relationships statistically have the woman in the relationship be, if nothing else, slightly more attractive than the man in the relationship, right? Which I find to be quite interesting. I was looking at some big data analytics last night. I had a coaching client who's just absolutely fantastic. She's wonderful. And we went out to dinner together, and we were going through some stats, and I was showing her some graphs from big data analytics on online dating websites. And what they find for women is that the more attractive the man is, the more that the woman assumes that she's going to have a positive experience, like a good date, right? And at the end of the day, when you look at what's self-reported thereafter, women are really let down the more attractive the man is, right? They project more onto the attractive man in terms of the experience that they're going to have, right? But they actually don't have as good of a time, right? Versus for men, it's the opposite, right? The more attractive the woman is, they have a better time than they expected they were going to actually have on the date, right? Which I find very, very interesting, right? So, at the end of the day, right, men, particularly high testosterone men, right? And when I say that, I'm talking about, serum testosterone levels between 4 to 6 weeks in your utero is when there's this massive burst of, Y chromosome dictated release of testosterone. And when this happens, it influences brain development fundamentally, right? And when you have men who are higher testosterone, there are morphological characteristics of that. You see more angular jawbones. You end up seeing kind of the brows being more pronounced. You end up seeing that the length of their chin ends up getting longer. There's all sorts of morphological characteristics, right? And keep in mind that women evaluate men's physical attractiveness in approximately 13 milliseconds when they see them, okay? And so all these things or whatever, it's basically, dictating, how much testosterone or whatever has this guy been exposed to, right? And yes, high testosterone is associated with a lot of things that are very attractive, but at the same time, there's certain things about high testosterone that maybe you won't find attractive. These guys tend to be more disagreeable. They tend to be more argumentative and more aggressive overall, not just, physically, but also, in terms of emotions, right? And so one thing that you do end up seeing is that men who are higher testosterone also are significantly more likely to cheat. Now, low testosterone men cheat as well. There's no doubt about that. Whoever's cheating, it's a terrible thing that should never happen, right? But men with higher testosterone are also significantly less likely to be as committed as men with lower testosterone rates. That's what the literature does suggest. And so at the end of the day, if you have a high T, right, so a high testosterone male, you can anticipate that the guy is going to have a little bit more wandering eyes, etc. And at the end of the day, men have a lot of intragender sexual competition, right? Men are obsessed with dominance, right? Now, keep in mind that domination and subjugation are very different things. I get frustrated when people tell me or whatever that, masculinity is toxic. It is not. It's just not, right? If anything, we need more masculinity these days. There's just no doubt about that to me, right? So when it comes to these different traits, right, what you end up seeing is that the higher T these guys are, right, the more likely they are to essentially have these, wandering eyes, etc. And because of that, and because of intragender sexual competition, what you're going to see is that, yes, mate poaching is also going to be something, this monkey branching phenomenon, that men are looking at as well. Now, I was definitely shocked in terms of the statistics that it's, 60% of men, my gosh, and 53% of women reporting having to, or trying at least to seduce a person out of a committed relationship, right? So the fact that that happens, if you find yourself in that kind of a situation, my real recommendation is to kind of check yourself. You'll get a sense. You'll probably feel justified because no human being really wants to check themselves out of doing something that maybe makes them feel good, or if they're single, it makes them feel hopeful, or maybe they're in a relationship that they don't feel satisfied with, and they're like, man, if only that person would get out of their relationship, then we could be together. let me tell you, God's timing on everything, right? God's timing on everything, but it's definitely not the right thing to do. There's really no doubt about it. But that is the current phenomenon of mate poaching and certain reasons why women and men engage in it. All right, everybody, thank you so much again for joining me. It's always a blessing to have you here for this hopefully illuminating conversation and discussion about mate poaching. If you did like the video, please do like it. Please do feel free to subscribe to our channel. We would love to have you as a follower. Please do hit that bell so you get notifications every time we post new original content, and share this video with your friends and with your congregation. If you're interested in having me come and speak to your congregation at whatever your place of worship is, it would be a blessing to be able to do so. Or if you're interested in one-on-one date coaching, it would always be great to chat with you. You can do so by checking out the website below. Signing off for the day, everyone. Don't forget to get out there, take chances, and be your best self, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you enjoyed that episode and you'd like to see more original content, then please do click on one of the links right here. I hope to see you in the next one.